Alrighty, now the next thing I want to show you is how landscape images are affected by init strength using the same prompt, a different prompt, and then I'll show you what it looks like when you're using a different model, just like we did with the facial features. So I'll start generating. Alrighty, starting with 0.1, this is with the same prompt, same aspect ratio, obviously different structure styles, different mountains in the background, all the same colors, but yeah, very different structures each time. You'll notice that it's always coming in at this corner, so it always has a face coming out that direction and a face coming out this direction, but sometimes the door is on this side, windows are on this side. It can kind of change. Sometimes it's a log cabin, sometimes it's made out of stone. Same thing with 0.15. Still a lot of variation in the structure style and the materials used in each of those. In 0.3, starting to see a little bit more consistency. All of the doorways facing this way, and always having eaves and windows. The mountains are starting to look a little bit more similar, starting to see peaks that show up the same way in more than one of these images. Now with 0.45, we're really starting to see it shape up, stone on the bottom, wood on the top, very consistent there. 0.75, very similar to our original image, always having the same peak, always having trees over here, very similar images to our original. My bad, those first two were 0.45 is where it starts to show up like this, always the same shape and angle. And then 0.6 is where it starts to get very consistent. And this is our 0.75. 0.75, you're starting to see tons of consistency, very little variation in the background especially, and only a little variation in the styling of the windows, the styling of the stonework. Trees are always in the same place, landscape is always in the same place. And then with 0.9, you're looking at very nearly a one-to-one image, just minor variations in textures across everything. So yeah, I'll go ahead and upscale our 0.9 and upscale our most different 0.1. Our background is the most different here, but our foreground is the most different there. This one's most similar to our original and the most different from our original. Mostly in our background and the structured trees in the foreground and some strangeness over here. All right, now the next thing I want to show is what it looks like when we change the prompt around a little bit and mess with the init strength. So we'll do a lone home. Now let's do a lone barn farm background. And we'll take away the open part with a farm background and see what we get with our different init strengths, starting with 0.9. Alrighty, now we'll compare it to what we got with our new prompt. So as you can see with 0.9, still not too much variation, starting to see a little bit already at the tops of our house, but still mostly a texture change with trees and mountains, but still very similar background, even though we changed it to a barn with a farm background. Now we'll look at 0.75. In 0.75, you can already start to see a little bit of barn texture coming in, a good bit more here, but still very similar mountains and trees. Still not seeing any of the farm background. Now 0.6 is really starting to turn into a barn, starting to see a little bit of a field pop up here, but we're still seeing lots of trees and the same mountain style in the background. In all of our images, a little bit more farm in the foreground here. And it's definitely starting to look a lot more like a barn. Now with 0.45, that's definitely a barn. Still got an open mountainous background, but we're starting to see some farmland come into the foreground. Now looking at 0.3, definitely a barn, keeping the mountains, but definitely have a little bit more of a farmland stretching out behind it. Same thing here, still got the mountains a little bit, but a lot more farmland and definitely a barn. No longer any semblance of home there. Now we'll look at 0.15, and now we've gotten rid of the mountains and it's just farmland and a barn. A little bit of mountains still left in this one, no mountains in here, and still mountains in this one. But much more in the background and have a lot more farmland coming up here. So still seeing a decent amount of influence, even at 0.15, still seeing some mountains, but for the most part, our written prompt has taken over. And then by 0.1, it's very similar. Mountains way in the background, but really it's mostly about this farm picture in the front. Generating some very beautiful images though. Now we'll go ahead and upscale our most different image, which I'll probably pick to be this one, and our most similar. And here we are, 0.1 is a lone barn with a farm background. And we've got just a little bit of influence still from our original image. And here is our most similar image, even with 0.9. Start to see a little bit of a texture change and a change to the chimney, especially from an actual chimney into more of a barn style roof. But yeah. All right, lastly, I just wanted to show you what generating with a different style does to our landscape image, starting with 0.1 in its strength. We're going to be generating with 3D animation style instead of our Dreamshaper version 7. Starting with 0.1. So as you can see, it's still a very similar styling from our original image. Still got mountains in the background, but just a very different style in terms of 3D animation rather than photorealistic, which is pretty cool. So keeping that same image prompt and written prompt is really going to help you keep something similar to what you have image to image, but give you a cool stylizing. Here's our 0.15. Multiple variations, but still in a similar style. 0.3 in its strength, starting to see trees again. A little bit more similar to what we've got, similar setups. Now 0.45, really starting to look a lot more like our original, seeing those two trees on this side, seeing that big peak here, little peaks there. Lots of similarities here. Honestly, mostly texture changes, a little foreground and background changes, not nearly as much as we might have expected. Now 0.6, very minimal texture changes, really just seeing minor changes now with the same, with using just a different model. Just getting that 3D animation style, but keeping a very similar image to our original, as you can see over here on the left. And now 0.9, almost identical to our original, with pretty much just texture changes from using a different model. We'll go ahead and upscale, see what crisp upscaling does. Maybe we can get it more similar to our photorealistic image. Here's our 0.9, very similar to our original. And here's our 0.1. Got a good bit of variation. And still that open mountainous background in our lone home. Just wanted to say thank you guys for watching. It's a pleasure to make videos for you, and I can't wait to make more. Let me know if there's anything you'd like to see in the future.